accident. Across India, Africa, and Southeast Asia, a strange pattern keeps repeating itself. Cities are exploding with people, but not with jobs. Urbanization is racing ahead, but industrialization is sailing. My guest, Mathew McCartney, has spent 25 years trying to answer all those questions, not from conference room, but from the ground. Mathew, welcome to the Human City podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'm delighted to be here. Very much looking forward to the conversation.
So, Mathew, I want to start with your story. Where did this journey really begin for you?
So let's say I've got an economic story, development economic story, and then a South Asia story. So growing up in 1980s UK was a fascinating economics debate. This was Thatcherism, the miners' strike, old school labour. This was a kind of very vibrant time to be thinking about economics. This was coming up to the end of the Cold War. Economics from a big story, capitalism versus communism, some of those big debates that we don't have anymore. I studied economics. I had a very inspiring teacher for development economics, Professor Peter Nolan. Lectures were just mesmerising. One of those lecturers used to throw his notes away and then start a passionate rant about the World Bank or China or something that was just utterly mesmerising when you're 18, 19. And then not long after that, I had a very inspiring teacher for South Asia, Professor Mushtaq Khan, taught India, Pakistan, and really kind of inspired me with thinking more about that part of the world. And so that was my economics and the South Asia side. Cities came much, much later. So I spent 25 years as a professional economist teaching development economics, South Asia, also quite a bit of Africa at SOAS and University of Oxford. I talked about everything we associate with cities: poverty, institutions, structural change, agglomeration, externalities, all those things that are intrinsic the study of cities. But like most economists, I never talked about cities. Proof: you go to a basic economics, a development economics textbook, look in the index, you don't see mention of urbanisation and cities. It's just not something economists don't generally like talking about. Place, they talk about markets, but don't think markets are embedded in a particular locality. So generally, to find economists talking about cities, one has to go to anthropologists, to urbanists, to geographers, etc. And economists are also not very good at interacting with the other social scientists. There's not much social in the social science for economists. So I was in an economics department for 20 plus years, never studying cities. I had a career change break about 5 years ago and moved to the policy think tank world, specifically with an urban emphasis, and discovered cities, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but discovered cities after having almost talked about them for 25 years. And it was absolutely wonderful experience finding this umbrella idea of concept that brought together so much of what I was thinking about. Instead of just talking about markets and industry in the abstract sense, as an economist, one talks about Delhi, Addis Ababa, and Johannesburg, and Lahore, and it gives character and excitement, I think, to one's thinking. So
yeah, from that 20-year career, you're moving from academics to really working on the ground. So how did it really change your views on inequality and urbanization?
How has it changed my views about inequality? Interesting question. I think as an economist, one can be very optimistic looking at a lot of the headline numbers. So for India, for example, has had now 25 years of being among the fastest growing economies in the world. A lot of the wider indicators of human development have improved fairly rapidly over that time. So poverty being reduced, literacy going up, the software boom, etc., etc. But looking at the functioning of a lot of cities in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, it does engender, to some extent, a greater degree of pessimism, because one sees the overcrowded roads, the lack of attention to proper planning, these cities sprawling at very low levels, the lack of good jobs being created in urban areas, and it does give one a degree of pessimism looking forward. Trade policy can be changed overnight. Firms respond to change trade policy 2, 3, 5 years, but how you build cities today really locks in the functioning of an urban economy, not just for 5 years, but for 50 years, 100 years. It's very difficult to go back and retrofit a city, to move people out of the way, to build a road, or dig underneath people's houses, to put in sewage systems. We are now thinking about locking in patterns of economic development for decades or centuries to come. So I think bringing cities to the centre of my thinking has been inspiring.
Also, one idea that keeps coming back in your work is the disconnect between urbanization and industrialization, especially in Africa. So cities are growing, of course, but not the way Chinese cities are, or maybe in the 80s, the Korea or 70s, the Korean cities were growing. So what's really going on here?
So I'm a bit of an industrialisation optimist. I think historically industrialisation has been the transformative impact on people's livelihoods. I mean, there's nothing quite better for generating jobs for the poorest and least skilled, particularly young women. Fertility rates dropping dramatically in the space of one generation, women having an independent income outside of the household, mixing and mingling with other women outside of the household. It's transformed the situation of life in Bangladesh, just as it did historically in China in the 1980s or